Hello and welcome back to a New Pace podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Andrew, and today my guest, who I'm going to be talking to today, is Beverley Powell, and she is the founder and author of Rest, Rise, Reclaim, an accredited life coach, a mentor, and licensed menopause champion. So lots of wisdom, lots of things that she's here to share, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you to the show, Beverley. So thanks for coming on and hello.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Delighted to be here. Very excited, actually. Very
Mm.
excited too. Thank you.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you on is that we'd met a few months ago and it just you know, like it felt that we had a lot to talk about at the time, and it was nice just to really meet you and to kind of think about the sorts of things that you do, self-expression and things like that. And stepping into a new pace can be really relevant to what you are about to talk about, I would imagine. This is
Yeah,
how my
absolutely.
thinking is.
Yeah.
So to start with, and this question can kind of cover all sorts of different things, can't it? But is that kind of question of what do you do and how do you support the people that you work with?
Yeah, well, as you said in the introduction, I'm the author and founder of Rest, Rise and Reclaim. So, in the main, in essence, I empower and lead women through health and well-being or through coaching, facilitating, and I do that through my newsletter, through one-to-one coaching, through group facilitation, through cohorts, intakes of groups. And my main audience is tends to be women. And I've recently wrote a book on rest, rise, and reclaim. So that's my book, which has just been published, and it covers how I do these things. So yes, in essence, I'm a leadership coach, and I empower others to be their best self and
Mm,
to rest, rise, and reclaim. And as somebody who has actually lived that life and gone through that, I know what that is. And also within the book and within what my focus tends to be on, are women of colour. For that reason, as a black woman myself and gone through, had that lived experience, I focus, my main central focus is that. However, I've worked with a wide range of people and also undergone some research when I worked in one part of a system, and the research involved the transgender patient accessing primary and secondary care. So
mm,
that involved interviewing sectors of that community going through transition, interviewing nurses, lead nurses, to understand their perception and the development of policy, etc., etc. So it's wide ranging, but I've chosen at this season of my life to focus down and niche down into women of colour and black women because there are lots of health disparities. We
mm,
see this nationally in the news. I'm choosing to focus on menopause, health and well-being. And this is because at this season of my life, whilst officially you go through menopause after a number of years, and you could say I'm postmenopausal, those symptoms never leave you. You're postmenopausal, you still have those. It's how you manage it. Some glide through it, some don't. And with women of colour, black women, they are more predisposed, and our research tells us that as well. And I'm very aware of some of those things. So I help to empower, lead through coaching, either those women who are still in the corporate world or working, or those who are not working and looking to develop and form a career.
mm. Yeah, that sounds so interesting. And so, like, you feel it, you come across so passionately about it.
Mhm.
And I imagine that both that lived experience and that expertise that you've developed over time can really help people. So, how did you get started with it all?
Um, I guess for over 25 years, I've been formally a diversity manager. working in various organizations. So that has always been the golden thread across my whole of my career. I'm coming to the end of my career now, working career. But diversity, equity, and inclusion has been a golden thread. So when I've looked at that across all of the protected characteristics for those who aren't clear on that are all groups of people or individuals identified under the UK Equality Act
Mm.
2010. So I would support a whole range of community members or individuals, groups under that. So I'd understand disadvantages, power, privilege. So that was always the driving factor to help shape and have those meaningful conversations. But as my career progressed as I got older, then I tended to centre the focus on health and well-being because around all that, the challenges of health and well-being, and increasingly and more, unfortunately, I have had a number of close friends and colleagues of colour who died in service. I am
Really?
not a doctor. I don't have a clinical background, so I cannot say it's from menopause. However, what I
Mm.
would say is they was in that category of being menopausal, and what I understand from research, particularly all of us it impacts, but Black women, women of colour, the drop of estrogen means we don't have as much coping strategy as what we had before. So in
Mm.
terms of resilience or this old narrative of the Black woman being the strong woman, I write in my book about this imposter syndrome and the superwoman cape. So what
Mm.
I decided to do when the menopause knocked on my door was to burn my superwoman cape because all my career I have been a woman, a can-do woman. Many bosses would say to me, "Oh, give it to Beverley. Beverley can do it," and I would do it. So either you could say I was a people pleaser or a
Mm.
can-do person hiding under my superwoman cape when really I probably couldn't cope. But the narrative on being a can-do person fitted me perfectly, and I
Mm.
decided to burn the superwoman cape, burn the old narrative about the notion of imposter syndrome because every time I got promoted, I just couldn't believe I got promoted. And I was always fearful and looking over my shoulder thinking someone is going to come for me and say, you're that girl from that council estate who didn't pass her 11 plus or whatever. And I was still living some things. And yet my life had changed, but I hadn't changed my identity. So I had to
Mm.
very quickly learn to reframe my thinking and get into the right mindset as I went through this particular phase of my life. So, burning the Superwoman cape, reframing my own thinking. And as a coach, it was important for me to do that because I had clients who needed that. So, I really need to get myself into shape too. So,
Mm.
those are the things that I've done. And that is I guess that's my why across that work.
Yeah, that feels so kind of symbolic,
Mhm.
burning your kind of superwoman cape rather than putting it on. You kind of saying, actually, I'm not going to do this. I need to step back from other people's expectations of me. And yeah, that I'd imagine lots of people would resonate with that. You
They
spoke
would.
earlier about empowering people.
Yeah, they would. And in fact, I remember delivering a workshop at a conference for an NHS organisation in London. And I was ready to tell my story of me as a little girl and my experiences. And I actually ordered a red cape. So as I
Yeah.
began to tell the story, I wore the cape. And then very theatrical, but to tell the story, then I unfastened the cape and threw it away and said, I refuse to wear the Superwoman cape. I burnt the Superwoman cape. The cape has gone. So it's very symbolic. And that's why I bought the cape. And I guess it had an impact on some members of that group who felt it, was very affected by that, and many wanted to speak to me afterwards about their own story about probably still wearing the cape, and some who had burnt the cape but felt rather exposed. Because that's the other part. If you're going to burn your Superwoman cape, you've got to be ready because you leave yourself vulnerable because you've had all
Mm.
the tools and anchors for all these years. then you suddenly burn it. What are you going to do? And if you burn
Mm,
it when you're in the menopause phase and, lots of hormones and estrogen aren't there, you really haven't got a framework to work around.
mm. Yeah, and all those challenges really are a nod to what feels like, a mixture of your sort of lived experience and then speaking with other people, the people that you're working with, and sort of knowing what's going on for them. So, in terms of your sort of own personal challenges, whether it's been about challenges in getting to this point of the um in who you're helping, or challenges about, personally or professionally, are there certain things that have been turning points along the way, or like the most important challenges, do you think?
I would say that one turning point, or some of the things that I have thought about, is as I've got older and as the menopause, I see that as a particular season of my life. And as you get older, people aren't here anymore, so I'm more in touch with or more aware of death. Where
Mm,
when I was younger, you think you are invincible. But now as you
yeah.
get older and you go to more funerals and things, and I started to reflect on my own life and what does that mean for me? And lots of people over the years had mentioned about writing a book. So I started to think over the years about legacy
Mm,
and what does a legacy mean for me? And I'd played around with writing a book, but decided to write a book and really get serious about it. And that was pretty difficult. Many people have asked me, how long did it take to write a book? And I would suggest you can't really say to anybody. Some people it takes years, some people 5 minutes or whatever. It depends on the content. And some of the content of my book has been around my leadership journey, the highs, the lows, the successes, and there's elements of bits in that book where I have been quite vulnerable and shared things that probably lots of people don't know about me. And I talked through that with my book coach and
mm,
mentioned that. And she was very encouraging and did say, look, people need to know who you are. What makes you want to write about that book? Who is the author? What is that author about? So then, and also it was a healing. So I find it was quite a cathartic release and it's quite healing. And I think there's something, well, not I think, I know that there's something about being vulnerable is a form of leadership. And Brené Brown talks about not just brave leadership. I like how Brené Brown talks about being courageous.
yes.
When I think about my career, yeah, I have been courageous. I've taken many uh, big steps, and your question was around what are the challenges or the steps.
Mm,
And one has been to leave family and friends from where I was raised in Lancashire to up sticks and move into Yorkshire, and I didn't know
yeah.
anybody, and start a new career working for the NHS. So I had property back home and left that, rented that, and thought I'd be here back home in probably 12 months. And sort of 10 years later,
Yeah.
I was still here and had several promotions and studied at the University of Bradford, etc., etc. And I'm still here. So I thought, well, yeah, it's a big challenge. And I've done that previously around taking a career break from the police service and deciding to train full time as a teacher. And then going back to the police after my career break and deciding that that was no longer a path for me and deciding to leave was a um,
Mm,
big career change and a big challenge, to be honest, because lots of people would say, well, you've got your pension, you've got this, and I just thought, life isn't always about pensions and how much annual leave entitlement. And what I realized was, as a full-time student, I realized, and I remember thinking very clearly about this, there's a big world out there. Couldn't believe there's a big world out there outside of this system I'd worked in for 14 years. And I think that was it. And again, it was a big risk. And then
mm,
being appointed into the prison service, I'd never been in a prison before, never been in a prison before. Again, another big risk. And as a woman of colour, as a black woman, as a senior leader, working in there and understanding theoretically some of the elements of criminology and working in a men's prison as well and
Mm,
managing men and culture and ways of doing was a big challenge and a big
yeah.
learning point from learning in theory to actually leading and being face to face with some very, very naughty people and having to manage risk assessments. So, I was appointed there after the untimely murder of a young Muslim, Zaid
Mm,
Mubarak. So, like the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, there was a big national report
mm,
like the Lawrence, but this was called the Mubarak report. For anybody who wants to look at that, Google it,
mm,
it's there. And there was several recommendations where each prison had to have a diversity manager. So again, I was interviewed, I was assessed, I had to do presentations. When I got the job, I still was wearing the imposter syndrome badge and I still had the superwoman cape. And I was absolutely sure somebody was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, you haven't really got that job. You're from that council estate. You didn't pass your 11 plus. We found you. And I still was wearing that in those roles. And I really had to work at shaking that off because
mm,
it's a mindset, because the identity was not showing that. But in the back of my mind, it's sort of, you're not a schizophrenic, but almost like that. I'd had to really sit down and give myself a good talking to. So again, big risks, some high risk stakes I've made over the years of my career. And again, moving, relocating, leaving family, leave myself vulnerable to move up to Yorkshire. Never worked in the NHS before, but
mm,
again, um, managed to get through the assessment, everything else. And the golden thread was always diversity management. And
yeah.
implementing the Equality Act and policy strategy, working with stakeholders outside of the NHS to support them as part of accessing the service, understanding data, and of course, supporting our fantastic nurses, matrons, leaders, directors of nursing as well. So I would say I've had a really good career, but it hasn't been gifted to me. I've
Mm,
had to work at it. I've had to
yeah.
work at it. It's not been easy.
Yeah, because it feels like all of those changes have been maybe a desire to be helping, a desire for more, and a desire to influence and to like implement change. Whereas actually there's lots of uncertainty about moving house and moving careers and going into something that you might feel that you that's new, anything that's new, like
Yeah.
imposter syndrome's huge, isn't it? And
Yes.
that idea of all kind of, as you described it, as people know, like you've got a big badge, you've got this big kind of imposter syndrome hat and your cloak, and actually most people see other people and think that they're doing great and they've got all their ducks lined up in a
Yeah.
row and they're really confident and such like, but then actually they may be seeing them with their protective kind of superhero cape and
Yeah.
not. I heard once the other day that's like people often compare their insides to other people's outsides.
Oh, wow. Right.
It really stuck.
Yeah.
And I need to find out and remember who it was that told me because they need credit for that. But it really resonates because I kind of feel that comparison and that am I really okay to do this sort of thing?
Absolutely. But I think there's something really powerful about still challenging yourself because I believe we're still growing.
Yeah,
You're still growing. And what I didn't want to do is remain static. And I do remember my mother saying many years ago, probably about 20 years ago, she said to me, Beverly, I think you are driven because I don't believe you've really got over not passing your 11 plus. So I thought
right.
that was an interesting perspective because it's something I've never considered, but it was something that was being played back to me by my mother. And maybe it was something back in the day, it was a big deal if you pass your 11s
Mm,
plus and you went to grammar school. Maybe it was that, but I do think there's something about, and this is only coming to my radar probably in the last 5 or 6 years. I've been reading a lot about Audre Lorde, the Black gay feminist, and she
Okay.
would talk about rest is a form of political warfare, she would say, about
Ooh.
resting. And I thought it's absolutely right, particularly for the black woman. She was talking about the lens as an activist, as a feminist, from the lens because there's an expectation that the black woman will always hustle. I'm aware in America, there's a hustle culture where you hustle for this, you work hard, you either a solicitor with 3 children, you're doing this, you're doing that, and oh, isn't that great? So there's a hustle culture, but also there's a kickback. So there's a very good book called, I think it's called The Nap Ministry, which talks
Oh, cool.
about claiming back and napping and how that there's some black and white footage in that book, I think, of some black women during the time of Martin Luther King, and they're all in the back of a church, all rested, gloriously dressed, ready for the march, but they was all taking rest before the march. And that really resonated with me, before the march, before the challenge, taking rest, where people don't often see that. The working woman, and my mother was raised us as a single parent, raised all 3 of us, had a job, had more than one job, studied. So I guess I saw the work ethic in my mother, and it was made very clear by my mother that we would all do very well because we
Mm,
was all told in no uncertain terms. I haven't come from one end of the world to the other for my children not to do well, the sacrifices that
mm,
she made. So she was from probably the Windrush era.
mm,
So coming from that and the sacrifices and helping mother and father to help to build up Britain after World War II, etc., etc., and what they faced. So, and I think since then I've done my own research over the years with black and brown women, and they've all been told that story by their family that you will do well, you will aspire. We've worked very hard, and the sacrifices that have been made. So maybe there's a lot of things. It's like an onion. People are
mm,
very complex. There's complex identities, and I feel I'm in that season to unpeel the onion and the layers and get down into the core. What makes Beverly tick? How
mm,
do I reframe that? Is that still my narrative? Am I still having that label? Am I still wearing that badge? Am I still wearing that cape at this age? Really? What impact is that having on me now going through the menopause? Does that still work for me? And when I sat down and asked myself those questions, it was no. So what am I going to do about it? So a little bit of self-coaching and
mm,
bringing other people to help me along the way while I burnt the cape, got rid of the badge and things like that, to help travel with me on that journey. So I've had a lot of really good support in terms of coaches.
mm.
I won't lie and say psychotherapists in America, it's no big deal. There's no shame on people saying they have that. But as
Yeah,
I
of course.
started to unravel things about my identity and where I was many years ago, and writing the book and unraveling things in the book, it was important that I had lots of good women to travel with me along that journey as well.
Yeah, yeah. It really kind of strikes me that you are sort of re continuing on that self-development journey, and I've learned a lot about yourself and really reflecting on your own personal journey as well as things like culturally and systemically, just really seeing how those things would impact. And as you were saying about rest and it being that act of rebellion almost, like there's an artist that talks about creativity being an act of rebellion. If you make art, then that's an act of rebellion as well. You kind of every time you're doing that. And because you've already spoken about that, I'd want to ask you about kind of what it feels like to balance that rest with kind of feeling empowered to do more, to push yourself, to rise up and to reclaim
Yeah.
what is right for you.
Yeah, what I'm very intentional about is resting. I'm very intentional. What does that look like for Beverly? That looks like for certainly for the last 30 years, I take myself away on a retreat.
Yeah.
For 3 or 4 days, I go to the Lake District walking. I do
Oh,
this
lovely.
alone. So this is probably part of a meditation practice. Probably I didn't think that, but I do think that's what it is. I have the best sleep ever when I spend 3 or 4 days, maybe because I'm out in the fresh air. I have all my maps and my walking boots and all the gear and go out up the hills and, having lunch outside and being out in the fresh air. And
Mm.
I do feel as though it's sort of reclaiming myself. And I think there's something also as part of reclaiming about reclaiming the inner child.
Mm.
So I'm bringing the inner child along, and I talk about the inner child a lot, particularly in this season of things that I'm doing. I'm bringing the inner child along, and I see going to the Lake District, going walking, being outdoors as part of playing. So that's my play, and that's a little girl, bringing a little girl out to play as well, and not being the big, serious older sister, Beverley studying, pushing and driving. It's time for play, and that's how I see myself as playing, and also weaved into that. And this is something I've had to learn only over the last few years. You can see in the background here, I've got joy, hope, rest,
Yeah.
peace, strength, patience. This there's something about self-love, and I've had to learn that.
Yeah.
And I've been asked some really, I won't say torturous questions, but in order to help others, or why am I helping others, there's got to be, and I've had to be grounded and intentional in my self-love. And that has meant for me, in terms of rest, it has meant being boundaried where I didn't have any boundaries because I was a people person and I would do anything for anybody, but I was leaving myself almost burnt out. Where in this season of life, I can't afford to do that because
Mm.
I don't have the hormones that would enable me to do that. So I've had to learn and become more boundaried and say no and be more focused, be more intentional about resting. And it hasn't gone down well because I have started to say no without having
Yeah.
to have a no is a full stop, without having to have a and because and having to have a whole paragraph at the back of it, but just a simple, just to say no. So becoming more boundaried has been something I've learned in terms of the rest phase, and then the rising phase is about the self-love and the healing and coming back to myself. And part of that healing is about bringing a little girl with her,
Mm.
bringing the little girl, bringing a little Beverley. What would little Beverley like to do? Well, little Beverley would like to sleep. Little Beverley would like to go walking in the Lake District. Little Beverley would like to journal. Let's get the pen out. I've got lots of bright pens and things, and I journal, but I journal with colour. So I write things and I journal or all sorts of things. So I bring the little, and if the little Beverley doesn't want to do it, then the boundaries come up because we're not playing.
Mm.
So it's about giving myself permission to self-love, to play, to rest, to sleep. Those are big deals for me because I've overrun myself and done that for everybody else, encouraged everybody else,
Yeah.
done it myself. So I've started to take my own medicine in this season and it tastes nice.
Yeah. That's good. That's so good. And when you were saying you encourage other people to do it, it's like I'd imagine you telling other people, Hang on, you can't pour from an empty cup." And I talk about that as well, and then go, "Oh yeah, but well, when did you last do something for yourself?" It's like, "Oh, I've just been really busy." So it feels really refreshing to hear that, and I love the flower in your background of your
Thank
videos.
you.
We've got love, strength, patience, joy, hope, rest, peace,
Yeah,
and it just feels like sometimes those things are just really nice to do, aren't they? And they're
yeah.
just really fun, like for fun and for well-being, rather than always be about achievement.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's just about finding the joy, which again you can see in the background, finding that joy, and it's not a chore, but finding the joy in that, and being more. I've operated when I started to write the book as well. I went straight into theory because I'm used to writing theoretically, and my book coach said, no, I want you to tell me about your earliest experience as a little girl. And there was aspects of that book that I'd put away in a drawer, locked away the key, and she's inviting me to open the drawer, lock, and talk about the your very earliest memories. So there was things of that I've opened Pandora's box. So I've got
Yeah.
to live it now. I've got to live it. So there's all elements of that. And that's part of finding the joy. Oh, that's where the joy is. I've forgotten about that joy. It's been locked away while I've been busy pursuing, doing, serving others, but no more. Now I'm
Yeah.
finding joy, self-love, and I've also found patience
Mm.
because I've often been impatient, but now I've learned to rest. And with that, perhaps you could say coming into this season, I've learned to have patience with myself and give myself grace because of many of the times I would beat myself up. No
Mm.
one else needed to do it. I was doing it myself, but now
Yeah.
I'm giving myself grace and that helps to heal me as well. So the old narrative, my body doesn't need to hear all those things because it's not true. Someone else has said that in the past. I'm repeating it and I refute and rebuke all that. That isn't the
Mm.
case.
So is that like the reclaim part that you're then sort of going, actually, I'm reclaiming who I am and what I choose to believe and how I'm choosing to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And shifting the narrative.
Mm.
Shifting the narrative. I have the book by Michelle Obama,
Mm.
Belonging, and I
Becoming.
know there's something in there that I relate to a lot. And she says that if you don't reclaim yourself and change your narrative, someone will make that narrative up for you. And
Mm.
again, that is why one of the reasons why I wanted to write that book, because it's my story, it's my narrative, it's my lens. Too often, if we allow people or groups or systems, whoever, to talk about us in a certain way, then a narrative can form. And then you wear that narrative because, oh, it must be true. And other people, or it's confirmation bias, they're looking for
Yeah.
behaviors or whatever. And I decided to burn that by writing the book. And as part of my reclaiming myself, I've shifted the narrative. This is my narrative and this is me. Whatever people say, that doesn't matter because this is my narrative. I've wrote about it and I am living it.
Yeah.
And it feels great. Feels great.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It just like I see you really lighting up when you're talking about that, as though it's like sort of almost like a weight lifting off your
Oh,
shoulder
yes.
and fitting in with the burning, the
Yes.
cape, and it
Yeah.
feels very sort of suffragettes, like we're burning our bras, we're burning all this, and then actually, how often are those sorts of things talked about, but then we still hold on to something tight, and then it's only really when by what you've said that you've done it for yourself that you can feel the difference.
Yeah, as part of reclaiming, what I have decided in my own time is to do this in my own time, is to do it for me. So much of my work is trauma informed. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Well, for me, in terms of trauma informed, it's not forcing someone to these are the goals, this is what you do, but to travel with them in their own time and be very intentional about that because not everybody is ready to shine their own light. We say that a lot. We hear people say,
Yeah.
shine your light, stop hiding your light under a bushel. Well, actually, some people aren't quite ready for the light to shine on them, but they are ready, but not to the extent where others may be shining their light. And very simply, it could be being on a podcast like this and being seen and this going out everywhere. That can be trauma inducing for a lot of people.
Mm,
Not everybody's ready to shine the light. So it's just about being trauma informed in my work, in my approach, and also ensuring with my clients and in groups that I develop safe spaces, psychologically safe spaces. But I take it one step further from psychologically safe spaces. I'm all about having courageous spaces
mm,
because we can have the psychological safe space, but it doesn't mean that everyone's going to speak up or the individual. But I encourage people, to be courageous, take it one step further, but
mm.
being intentional at their own pace. But I'm traveling with them all the way. So I'd
Yeah.
like to take that sort of trauma-informed approach, particularly since 2000, since that those days where we all had to wear a mask.
Yes.
There's
Oh,
lots of things that are still uncovered, and people are still, there's residual trauma from that.
yeah, absolutely.
All sorts of reasons. So yeah, that's where I am in terms of how I go about my business, why I do it, and bring the little girl along
Mm,
and protecting the little girl, and also trying to see the little girl or the little boy and whoever I'm supporting and coaching as well. What do they
mm.
want? Because they're the
Yeah,
ones who will shout first in many different ways it can manifest itself. So
yeah,
let's take care of the little girl and then the adult's going to be okay.
yeah, yeah, of course. And this idea of, helping people to be psychologically safe, not just physically safe, but then also pushing them past their comfort zone does make me think about like my framework of a new pace, which is about having that balance of acceptance and change. So
Yes.
when you think about like a new pace, pause, act, create, empower, some of these words kind of can correlate very easily. But
Yes.
what comes to mind about that?
You mean about power? Do you mean?
So, so in a new pace, this podcast is
Yes.
come about because of challenges that I've gone through, and it was at the point of sort of having health challenges for me, and then
Yeah.
having to take time to pause, and then having
Yeah.
to do small actions, and then stepping into a new pace.
Yeah.
And the pace word stands for pause, act, create, empower. So actually, um, when you think about taking time to pause, I feel like you've answered this by talking about rest, but does pause mean anything else?
Pause as well means to listen to the I won't say inner critic. Not everybody has an inner critic, but I think when you pause, for me, pause also means switching off from your electricals, getting away from the screen, getting out into fresh air, pausing, holding back on all the media and all the noise that's coming through. So pausing, literally, really getting intentional about pause. And pausing as well also means there's aspects of creativity and pausing and really just stopping to think and reflect. And
Yeah,
what comes out when you think and reflect. But in order to pause, I do feel it means being intentional
yeah,
about self, really getting intentional about self, because pause for many people could mean 10, 15 minutes, pause away from the screen, have a cup of tea, whatever. But I really believe that pause is about getting intentional, which is
yeah,
very runs on the same parallels for me as rest.
yeah,
As Audre Lorde said, it's a sign of reclaiming oneself. You could call it political warfare because let's face it, we're in a world where we can't go out these days without having our phone or our
yeah,
laptop. We're on call all the time. We turn the radio on. There's something bad happening in one part of the world, or the news. It's coming at us from all parts. So we have to take control of that. And pause to me means getting intentional about that, sitting down with ourselves, hearing what is that little girl trying to say to me because they can't get through because I've got so much going on. So it really means really getting clear with myself for me.
yeah. Thank you. And when we think about act, to act, is it what sort? Is it about action? Is it about aligned action? Is it about something else?
Action for me takes many different forms. And I think, as I've mentioned, being a trauma-informed coach, action can take many different guises. Action could sometimes just mean getting up and making your own bed.
Mm,
Making your bed. Action could mean sitting in the backyard with a cup of tea and look and be let the sunlight rise on you. Action, I think, is down to the individual, but action for me also means moving from one thing to another. Well,
mm,
not just, I guess, if it's lying in bed, what can I do? But the very fact you get up and do something is action. But for others, action could mean getting up, going to the gym, having a good workout, meeting friends. Not everybody's at that pace,
yeah,
whole pace. So action is what is moving from one thing to another at your own pace for me.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes the smallest thing can feel like huge, can't it?
It can, but often those smaller things I would often see with my clients are successes.
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is why I'm always big about some goals are strategies. So in an organization, it's a strategic goal with strategic objectives. But with my clients and in groups, an action or to act on something could mean a small step. And that could mean, in some cases, getting up, having a shower, brushing your teeth, making a cup of tea. You've acted on it.
Yeah.
Success, success.
It's a win, isn't it? These are all wins, and it's not a little win, it's a win.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then create. I've been talking to a lot of people. I talk to people all the time about creativity and what creating means, and sometimes it can mean different things. So when you think of the word create in itself, what comes to mind?
Well, I guess creating for me, creativity, yes, it can take very different guises. I think creativity, firstly, for me means having a vision or having a picture. I'm quite
Oh yeah,
pictorial, so I think about things in pictures. So 5 years ago, getting creative has meant a book, but what did that book look like? I had to visualize it and then bring it down from wherever it is to make it materialize. And I think lots of people talk about having this vision, believing in it, and then bringing it down. So a vision for me has meant having a vision, and then from having the vision, getting intentional, but at my own pace. It's like me sharing with you, I go to the Lake District. I'm not racing against anybody.
yeah,
I know that I'm going to climb that big hill, which I do, but at my own pace. And very often I'm invited along the route to come along with somebody and they've got the crampons and all that. And that's great. And they'll wait for me. But I just want to go at my pace. I know I'll get there and there is no rush. And when I get there, I can sit back, open my flask, look at the lakes, drink my coffee, all those things. So I think creativity is how the individual perceives creativity. That's what it means to me. But certainly it has to start with a some sort of a picture or a framework and then draw it down from that. And you might change it, but it's got to start with some sort of a framework to
yeah,
start with.
yeah. Start with an image in mind that you kind of want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things you spoke about right at the very start was about empowering people, empowering women. And so actually on thinking about empower, there's the word empower, and then there's things on the side of that of feeling empowered, empowering. So actually, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's two different, I suppose, lenses from that.
Yeah, yeah,
Internal empowerment. So for me to accept your invitation to come onto this podcast, to broadcast to the world, you could say more or less, or, I can't claw back what I'm speaking, but I feel
yeah.
empowered to do that. No one's told me, but I feel internally empowered to put out into the
Mm,
world with you and create. So that's what that means. The other lens of empowerment means as a coach that I'm empowering others. You could say pouring into one's cup. You
yeah,
pouring into one's cup, but not depleting yourself. So pouring into one's cup by being a coach, by being a keynote speaker, is through word empowering others. And that can land with people in many different ways. So there's an internal empowerment. And also I feel there's an external empowerment as well. And people, however it lands,
yeah.
however someone is feeling at that time, will think and may act or pause to think about it again in so many different ways. So your pause acronym I love because it lands so well with what we're talking about today.
Mm. It comes in so many times, doesn't it? Kind of
Yeah.
like, and I appreciate you saying about kind of actually there's something about kind of needing to make that choice to show up and be visible and share things online in the podcast that actually can, for me, feeling empowered is about a choice, and
Mm.
it's about being informed, and it's about kind of then making that decision and then going, I'm gonna choose what I say, and I'm empowered to share that or to choose not to share that. And so many people don't have those choices, or they might feel disempowered or discouraged. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, but and I think that that's a really good take on it. What's coming from the inside as well as what influences you get from the outside, and how you and I can empower other people.
Yeah, I
So
think empowerment, yeah, it's very, particularly at this time, globally, with all things that are going on, we are empowered to turn off that radio, turn off that TV, get outside, even if it's raining, get into the fresh air, not watch TV, switch off the phone. No one's telling us to keep these things on. So we are empowered to do that. And as I do that, I feel more connected with self
yeah,
because then the electricity and the radiation and everything else, I have switched things off and I am choosing to have a lovely bath with Epsom salts. I am choosing to meditate. I am choosing, and I like to use that term as well, my choice to say no. I am
yeah,
choosing. Thank you very much for the invitation, but I am choosing to say no on this occasion. Full stop. No, full stop. So it's
yeah.
all about choice. Greg Braden, an American researcher, it talks a lot about mindset.
Mm,
For anybody who's interested, he's on YouTube as well. Greg Braden, I have a lot of time for Greg Braden, and it's all about mindset, and how we can reclaim ourselves in so
yeah.
many ways instead of the media and things, reclaiming us because it's very subliminal. I'm aware now as being a solo entrepreneur of marketing techniques and things and selling things. And I've now become more aware when things drop into my inbox and it's saying 7 days left, you've only got 2 days left. And that sense of
Mm,
urgency, there's always a sense of urgency. And I'm now all about leveling the nervous system. And when
yeah.
we're tuned into these things and our cortisol, particularly at this season of life, menopause, postmenopausal, it's about leveling the nervous system because the nervous system can still be wired. We still have control. It's just about pausing, getting intentional, resting, and reclaiming, choosing to reclaim yourself, but being very clear about what that looks like for you.
Mm, yeah. Brilliant. So it feels like that they're really good words to sort of
Yeah.
come to a point of kind of finishing really with that. It feels really liberating and freeing to have that choice and to be able to
Yeah.
say even the smallest things. So, um, where would people sort of find you? And you said about social media, you said about like in terms of your book, how would people, if they wanted to ask you a question, get in touch?
Sure. So I am available on Instagram under Beverley Powell, Rest, Rise and Reclaim. I have a website. You could take a walk around the website and see some of the offers. I have free offers as well, and my free newsletter, which is sent out monthly. So there's lots of things there where I talk about health and well-being, coaching, top tips, etc. My website is restriseandreclaim.com, three W's, and then restriseandreclaim.com.
Yeah,
And also my book is available, Rest, Rise and Reclaim.
there
That
we
book is
are, lovely.
available on Amazon. So if you look at under Rest, Rise and Reclaim Beverley Powell, my book is now available for sale on Amazon under books section.
Fantastic. And we'll put those links in the description as well so that you can access that
Thank you.
straight away. But yeah, before we finish, is there anything that you think we've not mentioned or that we that needs to be mentioned or any final words that you'd like to share?
I think that I suppose, parting gift is just remembering to take time to center yourself, and have self-care, and that means self-love, and start to get intentional about self-love, working from the inside out. That has been a tough lesson for me, but I've learned that lesson, and it's really freeing to have that self-care and that inner framework because
Mm,
things then can bounce away from you. So having that inner infrastructure by working on yourself, working from the inside out
Yeah,
is super important. And don't forget the little girl and what the little girl needs and listen to the little girl, but you need to pause in order to hear that little girl. And that's
yeah.
it for me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And
Pleasure.
yeah, I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking with me and sharing your wisdom and experiences. And yes, th thank you. And thank you everybody for listening. If you found any value in this, make sure to do a review and all of those sorts of things, follow and all of those sorts of things, and let us know if there's any questions that you have, and let me know, and let Beverly know if you want to get in touch with her. And we'll see you soon. But cheerio, bye bye.
Bye. Bye.